I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. My guest today is a really fabulous electronic music artist living in Los Angeles. She's been DJing since around sort of the early 2000s, 2001, and producing her own music since I'm going to say around about 2015. She's also the boss of an independent record label, Corporatocrazy Records, which, like her own music, specialises in, let's say, the darker, more underground side of electronica. And for me, that really sort of hits a very, very sort of sweet spot of, this sort of abrasive, industrial and aggressive sort of pummeling beats that on the one hand sort of feels very austere, but on the other hand sort of feels very sort of democratic and communal. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Amy Swart, aka Vara Sky, to I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee. Amy, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Giles. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. So, how things have been sort of quite, I guess, over the last sort of couple of years, sort of quite productive for you. There's been quite a lot of, kind of output that you've been doing.
Yeah, thanks for noticing. I appreciate that. You get so caught up, and this is the layer, right? This is it.
This is like the sort of the control room, the nerve center.
Exactly, right.
Brilliant.
And I just sit in here and go at it. So, and then put it on the internet and hope people respond to it. So it's really nice to be creating things and having like some good feedback over the last couple of years too. So the pandemic started, and then the police brutality pandemic started. And I just got I needed to do something with my own rage and my own feelings about things. And when things are at their worst, that's when I feel really creative. So I just went with it, and didn't think too much about things, about getting too artistically caught up in things, because I thought the world might be ending, right? So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna create it and mix and master it to the best of my ability and put it on the internet, and that turned into an album, and then and then that turned into some more songs, and I took a break from creating so much, and I'm just coming back from that now. So
did you I mean, it's interesting that you say that. It sounds like the the music is a kind of outlet for your kind of creative outlet.
Absolutely.
And my kind of understanding and sort of view of it is that a lot of the sort of issues that are sort of close to you, sort of personally sort of close to you, sort of come out in your music. It is almost like that kind of channel. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I feel like I can say a lot more in my art than on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
That said, I love Twitter. I'm a big fan, and I tweet every day. But it's not like, with How Dare You, that track that I use, Greta Thunberg's, famous climate speech to the UN, right? That moment inspired me so much, and I just wanted to take it and like expand on it, what I mean? Kind of give it its, moment of justice and rage, and the ability to just be in the world, so and just kind of like take what she was feeling and what that invoked in me, and like expand on it.
I mean, one thing that's really sort of interesting for me was that your classical background, your sort of classical training in sort of composition, and I had that when I was a kid as well.
Cool.
And yeah, you know, I played the cello when I was a kid, until I was about sort of 16, and I then had, you know, kind of classical stuff versus the punk rock music, you know, that I wanted to go and sort of smash windows with, and you know, the punk rock won, you know.
Absolutely. Isn't it funny how we're like, you know, classically trained, but like choose to be outsiders, right?
Absolutely,
like,
yeah. When you were, you know, kind of trained, when you were, because I think you were what, piano, trumpet, and horn?
Baritone, horn, and then voice, you know,
and voice
I sang,
as well.
Yeah. In college, I sang in the Philharmonic choir, you know, very exciting. It was more the contemporary choir. We did like Adele songs instead of and songs from like musicals like Rent and stuff like that, as opposed to this other choir that did, you know, they sang songs in foreign languages, and it was all much more in the classical aspect, you know. So
yeah. And was this something that you know, kind of you know, as you were growing up, that you were kind of supported with, you were kind of, you know, sort of encouraged to go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my whole family, you know, my parents and my grandparents, and my aunts all pitched in to get me a piano, you know, when I was like 14 years old. And we lived in this like 3-story apartment, you know, in New York. And I remember my grandfather came over, you know, in a U-Haul, and he got it up 3 flights of stairs and brought it in and set it up. God. And, you know, and I don't play Rachmaninoff, but you know, I can play a little Tori Amos now, you know, like. So it's just funny, you know, Grandpa dragged that piano all the way up, and that's what I chose to focus on. But they really were supportive in that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you remember Star Search, that show?
Star Search? No,
Star Search. It's this old US show, old like late 80s, early 90s, you know. And I remember them trying to get me on that show because like I sang, you know, and so they were just like, oh, we got to get her on that. I never went, thank God. But they were showing me that they really cared, and you know, they thought that
this was good for you,
that there was something there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How come you didn't get, I mean, did you sort of resist doing that, or was it just something that you kind of quietly pushed away?
Yeah. And like, you mean the classical training or
the show? How did you get out of that?
I said I don't want to do that, you know.
You don't want to do it. Brilliant.
Yeah. And so it never happened, you know.
I mean, when I was a kid, I kind of got I felt like with my musicianship, I guess, that you know, my dad sort of really wanted me to do it, and because I was an only child, I sort of felt,
me too, cool,
kind of obliged, you know. I felt like the kind of like spotlights on you, and it's, oh God, got to do it, you know. So I kind of, I think that eventually caused a bit of resentment that I pushed it away, you know. And then kind of rebelled, and I was listening to sort of John Peel in the living room playing Extreme Noise Terror and Napalm Death and stuff like that, you know. And that was just like, okay, this is what it's about, you know.
F you, Dad. Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, right. I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier about you know, people acting like children sometimes, you know. Like when you are a child, that's how you act, you know.
I know. And you know, he was like so disappointed when I said I'm not doing it anymore. He was so disappointed. And it's funny though I think that, you know, those kind of memories of sort of when you're a kid, how I found that, you know, as I've got older, they come back to you later on in life, and you start thinking, oh my God, they're really influential, you know, those sort of situations.
For better or worse.
For better or for worse. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my therapist would agree with you.
Yeah. So what was the kind of intro into you know, kind of electronic, into techno and electronica music?
Right. Well, I was lucky to grow up in a city that had a lot of college radio stations. And so they were playing techno, you know, and the DJ was really cool. He would shout out the artist, the name of the track, and the record label every time, which was helpful as a teenager in the 90s. I could write that down and go to the record store and see if I could find it, you know. And then one of my friends, who's now a pretty big artist himself, which is great, Cody Murray. He's a really great, I want to say like house music artist, you know. I think he's had releases on Night Bass and Dirty Bird. I know he plays a lot of the Dirty Bird campouts now.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went to school together and liked music and stuff. And he took me to my first rave when I was like 14 years old, you know. Wow. And like, I should not have been there. You know what I mean? Like, I was young, but you know, this is like old school, man, you know, like, yeah. I mean, I think Cody was 16, you know, like, but we're the cool kids. So like, we just showed up and and they let us in, and it was great. And it was a trance, and there were 2 rooms. There was trance in the main room, and then drum and bass in the side room.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I loved it in there. And I just felt like, I don't know, like I was able to express myself openly, like for in a group of peers, like for the first time, like ever. And I was just felt like I belonged somewhere. And
right.
And I was like, holy shit, what is this world? Like, you know,
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. What is this music called? Who's playing? What's going on?
It's really interesting, that I think how that kind of gives you that, you know, how that kind of experience just kind of grabs you. You know, I remember, like, you know, again, when I was a kid, sort of looking through these you know, kind of record crates at, you know, and this is like back in, you know, sort of early 80s, and just sort of looking at record crates and looking at the artwork and just thinking, oh, that's a world that I would love to kind of get to know and be involved in that. And it just kind of like, there's something about it that just says, you know, you know, you sort of feel like they're kind of like almost your people, which sounds similar to what you had when you went there.
Absolutely. And just feeling like, oh my God, I'm not alone in this crazy world. Like, there's other computer nerds here. It's not just me. Oh wow. And you know, and that followed like kind of an obsession, you know, like when I was a kid, like of DJing. I wanted to know, you know, at first, my introduction to electronic music, I didn't know if the DJ was making the sound go okay, or if it was in the track, or like what's going on, right? Like I don't know anything, you know. And then you start paying attention, and so I was always the kid at the front of the DJ booth, you know, like looking over and saying, "Oh, okay, he's moving that knob. What does that knob do? Okay, like, did I hear a difference? What's going on?" You know. And that, you know, and then I learned how to DJ and stuff. So it was, but it was just like an obsession. I just really got engrossed in it. And
sorry to interrupt. Before then, what sort of music were you listening to? Was it kind of quite eclectic what you would listen to?
Industrial music.
Industrial,
like, yeah, some eclectic industrial, because, you know, you weren't cool, you weren't really goth, you know, unless you listened to like Skinny Puppy and Frontline Assembly and Pigface, right? Like those are, you know, that makes you cool. Like 9 Inch Nails, well, that's too, you know,
too big.
too big, which is
not
stupid,
underground, quite underground.
yeah,
Yeah,
Trent
I know what you mean.
Reznor's,
I know what you
like,
mean.
up there, you know,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, like, stupid. So anyway,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think that like good music, you know, like actually gets a lot of attention. Like, well, duh. I would hope so.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
I hope they're not making too many stupid people famous, you know, like I hope that, you know, musicians still have something of value to bring, and, you know, they're not just their Instagram accounts, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, you know, those sort of bands, you know, also I'm thinking, you know, kind of Ministry, you know,
I love Ministry.
Killing Joke as well. You know, I think, you know, really kind of just the power that it could bring was just different level, really different level.
Absolutely. I mean, they and like, I'm thinking back to this time I saw Skinny Puppy live, you know, and it was like, they're activists, right? They're really into animal rights and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they have like these huge productions, you know, and like they like just dress themselves to the nine with like gore makeup and stuff, and they've got like videos running in the background and light shows, like videos of like horrific animal torture or whatever, but it's you know, to get a point across, you know.
Absolutely.
And just to think about all that, and to get, like, I really respected that as you know, as someone, and I do that now, you know. I like to like have something to say, you know, like sure, you know, it's nice to just make a fun banging track, you know, like my last one, LA Bad Bitch, right? Like, that's just like fun, man. You know, I was just having a fun day. That's a superb
track. It's a really superb track. That I love.
Thank you so much.
I do love that.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you like it. Yeah. And it's like, it's not dark and heavy, and it doesn't have a fancy message, but it's just fun, you know. And I think you gotta have a balance. Like,
I mean, I know I sort of said in the intro, you know, about the kind of the sort of the industrial and the you know, kind of hard, you know, kind of like aggressive sort of beats, but you obviously well, I say obviously you do you know, more kind of like ambient stuff as well, which is, I guess, as you're saying, is the balance, is that balance.
Right, exactly. And you know, I struggle with finding a balance in my own head about like promoting my ambient tracks, promoting things that are more like mainstream EDM kind of sound, you know, or whatever. But because, you know, I live, you know, but I love the underground. That is where I live, you know. Like when I go out, I don't go to clubs. I go to warehouses, you know, and and so that's where I feel like I belong. And so that's the kind of music, you know, that I play and everything. You know, I don't play my, you know, ambient shit, you know, when I DJ, right? But I still love it, you know, and I still think that it has value, and I still put it out, you know. And you know, that's something that I'm working on this year, because I like being versatile. I like experimenting with different kinds of music, and just sitting down, writing without expectation, and see what comes out, you know. And if what comes out that day is, you know, I'm feeling sullen and some sad ballad comes out, well, great, you know, whatever.
No, it's I think it's really, I think that's really kind of exciting how you can do that, use that sort of, you know, versatility, and you know, just sort of shows that, you know, kind of like how you can kind of expand your mind, and you know, you use your ability to sort of create something that, and also, I guess the other thing is not being afraid of putting that sort of stuff out, you know, something that is a little bit different and might kind of challenge some of your listeners.
Absolutely. I think it's important. And you know, I know, like the artists that I really look up to the most are very versatile, you know. They make all kinds of music, right? And I might not like everything, but at least, you know, I've been exposed to different things now, you know, so I'd like to try to do that for my listeners too, you know. Now
you had if I'm not mistaken, you had a residency at the Lash in
Yes,
in LA as well. That was how long was that? Was that 3 years?
like 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
3-4 years. I'm questioning if I should do it this year or not. I love the Lash. I love the family there. It's wonderful. Wonderful little community, you know. It really is. Just your punk outcasts, you know. There's some people that show up in their spiked studded jackets, you know, and people that show up in t-shirts. It's a good crowd, you know. But everyone's in black, and it's all very serious, you know. So.
What does you know, kind of like playing somewhere like that venue sort of, I mean, you know, kind of what does that sort of experience give you personally?
The chance to connect with people that are really like I don't know, the core demographic or whatever that I'm trying to reach, right? Like how I explained, like that, you know, when I went to my first rave, I feel like I belonged, you know.
You belong. Like
when those kids come to the Lash, most people that go there, it's a small venue, you know, it's like 250 people capacity, and it's not like your typical huge club that people look forward to playing in LA. I like the more intimate thing, because the kids that go there are going there willfully. Like they're going there, they know where they're going. They want to go.
They're making a conscious decision.
Right. They want to go there because they like that particular counterculture, you know. And so it's, you know, it's valuable. I don't know. It's really it's meaningful when I see people dancing to shit that I've made, you know, and they're having a good time, you know, and like it just warms my heart. It means the whole world to me. So yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about counterculture, which I love, and I think you know, I think it's just such a sort of fantastic, you know, kind of movement, if you will. Do you feel there's a kind of resurgence in interest in counterculture?
I will say there's been a lot more people. Yeah, I mean, I say that, you know, thinking, well, God, you know, 2020, 2021, 2022, here we are. And there's not really a lot of data to go by, just because we haven't really, things have been happening, you know. That said, I did go to the Lash a couple of times last year, you know. They have been having shows and everything. So
it's interesting. I mean, I think that I was so I'm involved in a sort of magazine with and one of the people that's involved is Youth from Killing Joke, and it's kind of like based on a kind of counterculture, on the kind of counterculture movement born out of the old 1960s arts labs. And I think there it seems, I feel like there is, like from being in London, that there is more of an interest and almost like a kind of revolt, if that's the right word, against some of the institutionalism that's coming into art in general.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, in my industry or whatever, you know, it's if we want to take like electronic dance music, right, and put it into a whole category, you know, there's a lot of kids that are getting discouraged, you know, with the mainstream scene, because it's discouraging, you know, like these venues seem to prey upon young people to spend money that they don't have, and to appear a certain way and impress, and it's not about the music anymore. It's about, well, look who I saw, and I was there, and, you know, look at my Instagram story, and I was backstage, you know, and that's not what it's about, man. You know, like, and the stage even being like raised, you know. Now, I love performers, I love performing, I love it all, right? But like, I don't like the if you're playing in a small venue and the stage is like raised higher, like they're like, you're literally like worshiping this, you know, artist. It's, I don't know, it's too much for me, man. Like at the Lash, you know, we're on the same floor. At the Warehouse, you're on the same floor, you know, like, and there's a lot of, the only Warehouse parties that I go to, well, not the only, but are no phones. There's, you know, there's been this new embrace of no phone policies. Now I know that's popular in Berlin, you know, and a lot of people see it as kind of douchey, you know, like, you know, and I understand wanting to take a picture or a short video of your favorite artist or something and capturing the vibe, you know, but that's different than being on your phone the entire time and being on like Facebook Messenger while, you know, you're in the front row. Like I've seen that. And it's just like, I just want to smack them like, dude, like, why are you here? Like, let somebody else come to the front that's really here for the music and let them dance, let them enjoy the time, you know?
Absolutely.
So I like going to these no phone parties where everybody agrees that we're just going to live in the moment, man.
What you're there for,
you know,
is the music.
Take a picture of the wristbands, you know, like say, I had a good time, you know?
Yeah.
So
I agree with you. I mean, I remember, when was it? Probably about May, June 2020. There was the start of some, you know, kind of like, you know, illegal raves, you know, basically, you know, sort of going on in the UK. And you know, I kind of thought, good on you for, I mean, I know that there's the issue of this sort of the pandemic, and it was a, you know, health-wise, it was a sort of scary time. But I thought that this kind of showed on one hand, quite a strong hand, that, you know, the sort of the fact that rebellion is still there amongst, you know, kind of kids. You know, they're still prepared to say, fuck you.
Thank God.
I'm going to do this, you know? That's what I thought, you know, now, you know, and I think that is a positive, that kind of attitude is still kind of there. I was talking to some friends that I've got in Austin, in Texas, and there are, you know, things happening in, you know, kind of railway tunnels and things like that. You know, those things, you know, where the message that you get, you know, venues are being closed down, blah, blah, you can't do this, can't do that. Some optimism.
Well, we're still going to do it. Yeah, absolutely. You know? That's great. Railway tunnels here. We've got the LA River, right? And which is always fucking dry because we're in a drought.
There's no rain.
So it's just a nice tunnel with really good reverb, right? So you know, there's you know, cats that bring their turntables down there and they play jungle and gabber and you know, like 200 BPM, like, you know, hardcore shit, you know, like, it's fun, man. And they bring and spray paint, you know, and bring their hands down. It's cool. It's cool.
Well, it's interesting what you were saying about the, you know, playing on a kind of level, you know, not being sort of set apart and almost like that, which is one thing that's always sort of struck me about you, is you're kind of like, it's almost like this kind of, and I know that this word has kind of seems to have sort of lost its meaning, but this kind of democratic, you know, kind of communal community, it's around sort of community and sort of building that community. That's what's always kind of come across, you know, about what you're about, really.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that does come across.
It does come across for sure.
Cool. Yeah, because it's not about me. It's about it's about the experience. It's about being there. You know, if there's some kid that's like, oh man, what's this track? This is banging, you know, like, cool, find me on Beatport or Bandcamp later, man, you know, like, but like in the moment, we're all there for a good time. We're all there to dance, and it's not about me, you know.
Is this something, this kind of sharing, is this something that you've always enjoyed and has always sort of been part of your kind of identity?
Absolutely. I keep thinking, my therapist would say my parents didn't love me enough. And being an only child and not having brothers and sisters, and then like,
I think I'm kind of I'm starting to understand myself now from talking to you.
and saying like, okay, I have these things, you know, I don't know if they're any good, but you know, I just feel this compulsory need to create things. I always have. And I just, you know, when I was a kid, it was okay to play Tori Amos's songs and you know, sing other people's songs, and I love music, right? But there came a point where I was just like, well, what do I have to say? Well, what do I have to create? Like, you know, going back to Trent Reznor, you know, I was like, okay, well, here was a guy that was classically trained in piano, you know, and he's a fucking rock star, you know? And I was just like, okay, well, how did that happen? Okay, you need a MIDI keyboard. You need a synthesizer. Oh, okay. And I remember being a teenager at 14, 15 years old, getting my first MIDI keyboard, you know, and hooking it up to Cakewalk, right? That was the program at the time. Yeah. And just to be able to like basically play the piano with my different presets or whatever, like, you know, but that was my first introduction and into electronic music, you know, like I went from a electric piano, or not electric, but piano, to MIDI keyboard, you know.
How did you you know, like you say, you know, kind of creating has been, you know, it's kind of like who you are. I mean, do you feel do you get any kind of like fears about when you're putting stuff out there? You know,
oh my
it's
God,
like you're sort of like opening your soul and saying, this is me, and give me whatever shit you want to, but this is me.
Yeah, I still struggle with that, of course, like every single time. Like I was saying, you know, when I do something that's not techno, you know, I'm like, I don't know if I want to promote this as much, you know, like, what do people think? Like, do I have to change my whole identity? You know, like, it's ridiculous. Everyone's so focused on their brand now. And if things don't perfectly align with like some narrow vision, it's like, it feels insignificant, but it's not, you know, I just, art is not that way, you know what I mean? So but yeah, no, I struggle, absolutely.
Have you felt any times when you know, kind of like when you have that, you know, you can think, oh shit, okay, should I put this out? I'm not sure. And then you do, and then you know, all those fears are obviously, you know, kind of unfounded, you know, because you get a good response.
Yeah, I mean, recent example, I did this track called Fight for Freedom. I used audio samples from some Black Lives Matter protests here in LA. And it was I entered the songwriting competition that this ACLU attorney put on. Pretty cool, man. Like human rights, you know, civil attorney. And he does really cool things in the community here with youth specifically. He encourages you know, action through nonviolent means. So and using music and the creative arts to do that. So like every week during 2020, he brought down Freedom Fridays, and he brought bucket drums down to City Hall and offered them free to kids. And everyone was drumming and having a good time and talking about, you know, important issues like state violence and human rights. And it was really cool. Anyway, so I'm like looking up to this guy and I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm just gonna enter his competition because, you know, like, and then I ended up winning silver for the songwriting award. Amazing. Yeah, and I was just like, oh wow, like look at that, you know, this track that I thought was it's okay, and because it's, you know, worldwide competition, you know, it was like I think third place was won by someone in Nigeria, you know, so I was like, there's no way I'm gonna win. I'm in his hometown, you know, like, but he enjoyed it, and that's really cool. So.
Wow. I mean, that must have been a great feeling to kind of do, you know, to sort of get that, you know, kind of great sort of validation for what you're doing.
Yeah, and with someone with the same message, that I really appreciate that nonviolent action. I worked for Greenpeace for like 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And just what they do with bringing awareness to certain issues via social media, getting people engaged in nonviolent ways. And, like we got Apple to switch to all sustainable, renewable energy at their headquarters in Silicon Valley. Okay. And we did that via using hashtags on Instagram. So, like it's powerful. So yeah, it was really cool to collaborate, not collaborate, but, be a part of something bigger than myself for a greater good. Yeah.
I mean, that's another area that I'm obviously sort of interested in, is this sort of collaboration and I guess, kind of networks, and, how you kind of build your networks, and how that, opens up other sort of opportunities. I mean, over your time, sort of DJing and then sort of, producing your own music. I mean, how have you, I guess not sort of consciously gone about that, but, developed your network and relationships?
I think some of it is conscious, and like, you just got to admit that, like I was saying, I'm a computer nerd, man. Like this is it. I like to stay here, and make my music. So when I go out, it's intentional. It's because I want to be a part of the community, or, see a certain artist, or meet a certain promoter, or someone like that, and so some of it's been like that, and then some of it is just much more natural. It's like I have a friend and they know someone else and they introduce me, like at a party, or, a networking event. There's a really cool networking event that was taking place right before lockdown. In fact, that was the last show that I was booked for, and I never got to play it because the pandemic started. So frustrating.
Oh,
I was thrilled because it was like a artist collective. It was called Grounded, the event called Grounded, which is a really good name for an event for upcoming electronic music artists.
Yeah.
Especially in LA. And they had mental health speakers and people that were in the community, people that did lighting, people that do videography, and I think that's what gets lost, especially in LA, is that like people see the artist in lights and they think, oh, it's like, no, it takes a team of people to be able to put on shows. It always takes a team of people to do anything, So it was just a really cool event that brought the community together, and they would do like a Q&A session for like an hour, and then they would have a DJ play, and then it was a networking event. Everyone that was there was part of the electronic music industry. And so you just talk to people. So that was a really cool, intentional yet casual networking event that was taking place. And then I'm not sure if they're going to have it again, but pandemic kind of like screwed everything.
Screwed everything up as far as any kind of like social interactions concerned, didn't it?
It changed. I don't know, I want to try to be like it changed course, that's all. That's all.
I think that, I mean, it's funny, those networking events. I mean, I think it's really important. I mean, for me, and because I'm a bit of an introvert. I think that's kind of, and I guess over the years, I've sort of I've adapted with that, but there's still sort of some situations I'd rather not be in, and like
you don't want to go to the
networking
interview?
Fuck that, no, I just can't. It just fills me with fear.
It takes me a while to recover from parties sometimes, right? Like you go somewhere and I can be very pleasant and talk to people and everything, but it drains my energy, man. Like I have to recover the next day. I mean actually that's an interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up about kind of draining your energy, about resilience, which I think is for me is just I don't know if it's again, as I sort of get older, that
find like sort of resilience drains, and you have to kind of like recharge and, you know, kind of build yourself up. It's a challenge sometimes, I find.
It is. And to know like when you need to relax, when you need to take time, you know. I was streaming on Twitch, right? Like for yeah, and just doing, because I wanted to, well, I was producing every day, right? Like for 2020, 2021, most of 2021. And I was like, well, why don't I just show that to people? Why don't, you know, again, bring the community in and say, hey, yeah, like this is what I do. There's no secrets, you know, like there's no secrets. Everyone watches the same YouTube tutorial videos on, you know, how to produce electronic music in Ableton. Like, so why not show my process, you know? And that was cool at first. That's right? Interesting. Yeah. And then it became burdensome. And I started to feel burnt out. Instead of feeling excited about sharing, I felt like I had to create for an audience, and it was all internal, you know, but I did not like what that did to me. And so I said, okay, I'm not creating for me. I'm creating because this is what I've said that I'm going to do every day. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, that's cool, but I just felt like I had no privacy, and I needed a break. So I did. I took a break, and then I wrote a track that's going to be released early this year. I'm not quite sure when, but in the first quarter here, I wrote a track, and then I just kind of like set the computer aside and said, okay, I'm going to enjoy my holiday with my family and, you know, just relax.
It's interesting how on the you know, sometimes the, you know, ideas that you know, you're putting you're streaming on Twitch, you know, kind of, I think that's brilliant. I think that is so good. And but I know what you mean, that it almost sort of feels like there's an obligation. It's like, okay, I've started this now. There's expectations, and you're right, it is internal.
And then that rebel that's inside both of us comes out and says, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, you know. And well, I'm not going to stream anymore.
Yeah. Do you know, it's like when I started this podcast, I'd never done sort of podcast before, and I had to be, you know, pretty much dragged into it. I found every reason not to do it. And they weren't reasons at all.
That's what you're looking
just,
for.
You know, right. Oh, okay. I need to go and sort of sweep that bit of dust up there. You know, that was my excuse for the day, you know. And when I did it, I really loved it. But you know, there are still times, you know, when I think, is it becoming an obligation? You know, but it's internal stuff. And then, you know, I come and speak to you, and it's all great. It's just great, you know, kind of like having these sort of really wonderful kind of conversations. And I think for me, that's what I have to remember. I have to remember you know, how I feel when I'm having these conversations about how great they are. You know, I'm getting to talk
and how like we're not alone.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. Like I do the same thing. I have to focus. Well, it's easy to see the negative, you know, it's easy to focus on the negative in any situation because it stands out, you know.
It does.
Right.
Totally right. Totally right.
As opposed to being like, oh, I had a good day today, you know. I deliver food, right? Like for day job or whatever. And you know, I never come home and say, oh, wow, what a great day I had. If I had a great day, I just, you know, go about my day. But if there was like some rude person at the restaurant, or if someone was wearing their mask on their chin and serving food, I come home and I'm, blah, 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 and I can't believe that jerk, and blah, 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 blah. How rude are people, and they're so inconsiderate. But, you know, I'm not taking into account all of the other restaurants I went in where everyone was doing everything they could to protect themselves and others. You know what I mean?
I think, I mean, it's like we were talking about before we started, you know, recording about you mentioned about empathy and kind of like understand, which I think, you know, in this world now is the whole thing around empathy and emotional intelligence, I think is just so important that, you know, from that because we've kind of like developed, you know, technology has taken over so many parts of our lives and almost like kind of dehumanized a lot of stuff in our life.
No, I completely agree with you.
You know, and trying to bring that back, you know, with that kind of understanding of what makes another person tick and what the effect of how you say something to somebody.
Well, it's realizing that there's a human being on the other end of your tweet.
Yes.
You know,
yes,
like sure, there's bots, sure, there's, you know, all kinds of things on the internet, but try to think about, you know, the you're talking to another human being, you know, and would you say these things to them in person, you know? Like, well,
absolutely.
if maybe you would, and maybe then you need like some more empathy training, right? I don't know. But I think there is a disconnect, and that said, you know, there's been a lot of like death threats and stuff to officials, you know, in government in the United States over the last few years on both sides of the aisle, you know, and I think about that, like the disconnect is now transferring into phone calls, you know, like it's not just a tweet, they're calling and leaving voicemails. And I'm thinking like, I would like, don't people understand that there's consequences to your actions, like regardless of empathy and real, and thinking like, my God, how would I feel if I got told that someone wants to kill me and that they're want to hang my children or whatever horrible thing, you know? But you know, well, there's consequences to your action. There are laws, you know, like you can't just threaten someone's life, man. Like you can't just storm the Capitol building. Like there's consequences.
There's consequences for those actions, isn't there?
And if we have to start there and then say, okay, you know, like these are people that are just working and trying to do a job and or what, you know, like it's I don't know how we got so selfish. And I thought maybe it was just something like a narcissism epidemic that was like in the United States, but talking with you and some other friends that I have that are like international.
It's international. No boundaries.
It's we've got a couple of pandemics on our hands, it seems, but like, you know, we I don't know what we'd call it, you know, like a narcissism epidemic.
I think music and kind of culture has got a really important role, you know, to sort of play in this, you know, through kind of messaging. Obviously, you know, as we talked about earlier, you know, that those issues that are important to you, you know, kind of come through in your music as well. And I think, you know, doing that, you know, having that as your kind of medium and your sort of channel, you know, is building, you know, a kind of like an awareness and almost a, you know, there's a message in there that has to be shared.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, that's really cool to hear. Because it is very intentional. You know, I do. I have a lot to say, you know, and I look forward to having to say more. The new track that I have coming out, I use Charles Bukowski's poem "Born into This."
Okay.
Now, born like this, into this, you know. A lot of people get that tattooed. A lot of indie people get like "born into this" on their arm. I've seen that. But yeah, I like using other artists, you know, to say what I'm trying to say too. Like the track "Overthrown" off of my Resist album, I use a sample of Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine. Just an interview that he had back in the early 90s on MTV is what that's from. And I watched that and I was just like, dude, like word for word, exactly what I'm saying. So I'm not going to talk into a microphone. I'm just going to sample this interview and throw it in a track.
I mean, again, I think that, you know, that's a great way of, you know, because with that, you're going back, what, you know, 30 years. Holy shit. Yeah. Well, but what you're doing is you're you know, the kind of like the issue's the same, and you're kind of going across generations there. And I think and again, I think music has got a really strong role to play in that, bringing generations together, because we've you know, another kind of like fracture line has been generations. It's like, you know, kind of, you know, 4 to 15 doesn't engage with, you know, 35 to 45 and that kind of stuff. And now we've got
right,
the
and we
biggest
would
number
never
of
understand
generations.
each other.
Yeah.
And that's false. That's absolutely false. Yeah, just like you said, it's the same message, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and to be able to kind of show people that. Well, that said, right, when you're 20, you think you know everything, right? Like it doesn't. I mean, I know I did, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone does, you know, like, and you think you're invincible and you know everything. You got it all figured out. And these guys that are, you know, a little older, man, they're too old. They don't know what's going on anymore, you know.
Yeah. And now I think I know it all as well. Of course I know shit. Oh, I really do.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think that's it. It's just recognizing and saying out loud too, you know, like, I don't know everything.
I don't
like,
know. Yeah. Well, this is
right.
the thing, because this kind of takes it kind of takes a bit of courage, doesn't it, to say, you know, I don't know. I don't know the answer. You know, and I think, you know, for people in particularly in who work in corporates as well, you know, saying that you don't know, you know, it's in some of the older school, the less forward thinking corporates, of which there are a lot, you know, admitting that you don't know something is like sign of weakness. Can't show a sign of weakness.
Right. So right, exactly. And that
Crazy.
doesn't help anybody, you know.
No.
Anybody involved.
How important, so you've been in LA for what, about 12, coming up for 12 years, I guess.
Yeah.
And how important is of your kind of environment, so LA and before that in New York, how important have those environments, those sort of surroundings, been for you as a, you know, just as Amy, and also as a kind of musician?
Good question. Yeah, the environments. Well, in Rochester, I mean, that was it was more, I mean, it was more underground scene, you know, that, you know, when I started going to raves and stuff, it was late 90s, early 2000s. It was a different time. You know, like there wasn't EDC yet, let's say, you know, there wasn't these huge massive festivals, right? I remember being like 19, hearing about the massives out on the West Coast, you know, and all these things. I was just like, oh man, how cool that must be. It sucks that I'm just here having to go to, you know, I would go to Toronto a lot because Toronto was closer to where I was than New York City. So you didn't have to have a passport for quite some time. So you just go there, you know, and party. Wow. And I remember going up to see Paul Oakenfold one time, and like the customs agent, the border guy, right? He's like, oh, what are you guys doing? You know, we're all like candy ravered out, you know, and we're like, oh, we're going to see Oakenfold. He's like, oh, cool. I'm going to get off work and come right there. I'll be right there. Yeah, partying with the border agent. It was fun, man. You know, it's different. It's different. You know, now that club, the Government, it was called, with a U, very, you know, very cool. Yeah. Now, you know, that's closed down, and it's sad, you know, but so I think that influenced me as far as like, now that's my frame of reference for like a good time, right? So so in LA, you know, with the, you know, I did participate in the mainstream hubbub, so to speak, of like, you know, how to come up as an artist here. You know, it's like, well, there's a lot of pay to play gigs, which you know, it's just, it feels dirty.
Yeah, I know.
You know, you're selling tickets, right? And it's fine if you have an audience for that, but when you're just starting out, like you might sell 5-10 tickets to your friends tops, you know, and then you know, and you've got kids that can just buy the rest of them, and then they get this gig, you know, opening at this big club or something, and then they get the video of them in lights, and then that's what it's about, and it has nothing to do with the experience that the value that they're bringing as an entertainer. It's, you know, it's, I saw that right away. I did a few of those gigs. And I said, okay, this isn't for me. I played in the front room of this club called Avalon here in Hollywood. It's, you know, pretty infamous or whatever. I remember connecting with some people, of course, but then most of the kids there were just, you know, faded beyond belief. And they just went there to get messed up. They didn't go there for the music.
For the music, yeah.
I mean, sure, get messed up and enjoy the music too, whatever, you know, no judgment. But it just felt like I was playing to a crowd that wasn't in the same reality I was in.
Yeah, I got you.
You know, and so that said, I said, oh, okay, well, I don't want to play these events. And then I found myself not wanting to attend, you know, these events and these huge clubs. And the only reason I go now is if, you know, there's a major artist in from overseas, and you know, you know, you can't choose where you get to get booked, right? You're just like, oh, I'm playing in LA, and you don't know that it's some douchey club, you know. So I go out sometimes to these places, but most of the time I'm like, okay, what else is going on? There's got to be cooler things going on. Like, what happened to this old school vibe? And I found it in LA, and it does exist in a lot of different groups are doing their own independent indie thing. And I just started going to those shows, and, you know, in the LA River and in warehouses that, you know, might get shut down, you know, and like, well, isn't that the thrill of it? Like, you know, like, right.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So I'd rather play those events, you know, and even though there's less people, it's more meaningful of a scene to be a part of than just be like, oh yeah, I had hundreds of people at my show, but no one knew who I was. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I remember. I mean, you mentioned earlier, just sort of in passing about Berlin, and since we're kind of talking about, you know, environments, I remember going to Berlin a few years ago with my friend for his birthday. We just stayed maybe, I don't know, three nights or so, and when we kind of like sort of checked into the hotel, and the person who was checking us in said, you know, if you want a techno club, there's a really or a kind of techno venue literally just up there, because Berlin is so well known as techno. It felt like there was almost like an assumption that you were there for techno, because it is just so prevalent and kind of like associated with Berlin, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely a place where I aspire to play someday, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, right,
it's a great place. I love it there. It's probably one of my favorite cities. I think it's just fantastic. I think it's great.
See, and that's so cool to hear. And that's, talk about counterculture taking over, right? Like, I mean, I think about like the kids that were like squatters, you know, they came in and were just like, this is our city and we're going to take it. We're here and we're going to just stay here. And they all turned it into this, you know, really creative city, from my understanding. You know, I have not been there yet. So,
well, you have to have that on your bucket list, and you know, when things get a bit easier, then sort of get over it. Be amazing.
Yeah, or I could just, you know, put myself in a bubble, a plastic bubble, and so, I don't know. I don't know. I'm so done with this pandemic. It's so frustrating.
I know. It's like it's just about time to kind of move on and
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
just
when
kind of
it's
do
like,
things.
I've done all the right things, right? Like
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got my jabs, right? I did all the things, and I wear my mask and I sanitize my hands, and what
yeah,
else can we do, man? And it's
yeah.
just so frustrating
Want to
to
sort of play live and get back to that kind of humanity and connection
the
with the
connection, the
yeah,
physical interaction. Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
Zoom's great and all, but
Yeah, it's funny. I remember talking to like one of my very early episodes, talking to Dave Haslam, who was the sort of DJ at the Hacienda in Manchester back in the kind of end of the 80s, and he was saying that he viewed his role as being not necessarily about him connecting with the crowd, but the crowd connecting with themselves. That was how he kind of saw it.
yes, that is a really good, that's
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah, that's what it should be. I mean, should is a strange word to use, but I mean, that would be my goal as well. Absolutely. Like,
yeah,
you have some critical thinking skills,
yeah,
in every capacity. Absolutely. If I
yeah,
can like
yeah,
hold up a mirror for people,
yeah.
like, then I think the world would be better.
Well, I think yeah. I mean, being able to kind of think about what's happening in your, in the minds of the people on the dance floor. Thinking about what's kind of going through their minds. It's a skill. You've got to be able to do that. That's how
Yeah,
they
I
make
mean,
their connection.
now it's not so hard. If we played a show like, tonight, everyone's there to
Everybody
escape
will be there.
reality because
Yeah,
we're all sick of this pandemic.
yeah.
So,
It's just like we're just going to go sort of batshit for a few hours.
right. So, so have fun, be light, play some bangers,
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Amy, thanks so much. That's been really amazing talking to you. Thanks so much for giving up your time and having a chat. It's been really wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Giles. I really appreciate you.
Oh, not at all.
Got
Not at all.
a great podcast, and I
thank
really
you.
look forward to the future for both of us.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.